pretty crazy times, and here we are again today with Sam. Sam, I'm going to kick it off with the questions. You ready?
Go for it.
All right. So the first question is pretty general, and I think you've been asked this before as well. What's the intention of doing these interviews?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, like, I feel like, I mean, you guys all deserve to hear from me about what happened, and I want to be able to say it.
Is it me or is he choppy, the chat?
I've lost the connection as well.
Yeah. So Sam, you're a bit choppy, my friend. So you gotta just fix the internet somehow, if you don't mind.
Sorry, give me 1 second.
Can you hear me?
Just,
Sam? Yeah, no worries, man.
All right, there we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. All right. So the question again, the intention of doing this interview.
Yeah, I think, at the end of the day, like, it's, I feel like you all deserved to hear from me about what happened. I feel incredibly bad about it, and I feel like, I don't know, that's the least that I can do.
All right. So the first question I have, and I know chat has got a lot of questions as usual, but the first question is, there were many other executives around you, and I won't name anyone, and they've been pretty silent throughout all this. So my question to you is, how involved were they in making those major decisions?
I mean, to some extent, I think that there was a pretty big diffusion of responsibility. And I mean, I feel incredibly bad about what happened. I feel bad about everything. And I think
that we're losing the connection.
You're choppy. You're choppy again. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Maybe go somewhere with a better internet connection.
Do you have a different connection?
It is not that. But anyway, it should be good for now. So
okay.
Yeah, I think, like, at the end of the day, look, I was CEO of FTX, and like that means that one way or another, like, what happens is my responsibility. And I'm the one person who doesn't get to say that whatever, that wasn't sort of like, that wasn't in my realm, that wasn't something that I was chiefly responsible for, that's something that other people were thinking about. Like, I shouldn't get to say that. And I did massively screw up in I wasn't on top of shit. I wasn't on top of some of the most important things that I should have been. That's on me. And I don't think I think no one was really on top of international position risk management. And a lot of people could have been, but I was the person who should have been responsible for making sure that someone was.
How involved were you on the Alameda side versus the CEO and co-CEO at that company?
I haven't really been involved in Alameda for a number of years, and I get, like, periodic high level summaries from them on some of what was going on, but I haven't been making trading decisions there. I haven't been making day-to-day decisions there. I hadn't been paying much attention to it, and part of the reason that I had been paying so little attention to it was out of, frankly, out of a concern about conflicts of interest.
I have a follow-up question on that.
If we don't. So Kim, the way we structured it is, so we've got a list of questions, me and Chet, that we've prepared, and then we'll give the mic to the rest of the stage to ask follow-up questions.
Yeah, it's just important that there's context here to what he's just said. So if you don't mind, you told me that I can ask the first question.
Question when we move the mic to the panel. So you'll be the first one to ask a question after we're done with the line of questioning, if you don't mind.
Yeah, but he said something that is quite important that I think is relevant to catch up on, if I may.
Oh, I'll let you just add this comment, please, and then we'll go through the line of questioning. Please, Kim. And just keep it short, if you don't mind, please.
I appreciate it. So Caroline Ellison, the former CEO of Alameda Research says that you knew that FTX customer deposits were misused against your own terms of service. And then you've stated in several interviews, without much confidence, I may add, that you didn't know. And by saying that, you are basically throwing Caroline under the bus, because if you didn't know, then she must be the culprit who is legally responsible for billions of missing, right? And it's not Caroline had a romantic relationship. So my take from that is that you had power over her and that she did what you asked her to. So my two, would anyone believe?
You're dropping out, Kim.
Yeah, why would anyone believe anything you say when you're throwing your own lover under the bus? And then I was told.
I'll let you, please, Kim, if you can get to the question so we can get through the line of questioning, if you don't mind, please.
Caroline is here and listening right now. So is there anything you would like to say to her?
I'm deeply, I mean, look, I fucked up big, but I'm pretty offended by some parts of that. Like, Caroline and I had been together for a while. I don't control her. I never did. I think it's really fucked that you would say that I would, that's how things work. And, you know, putting that aside for a second, like, I wasn't super involved in Alameda. I was not involved at all in the trading. I hadn't been for years. I was intentionally not getting involved in it because I was concerned about a conflict for interest. But you know, as to you know, I guess I'm not entirely sure what the question was. There's sort of.
We'll go back. We'll go back to the line of questioning. Chet, I'll give you the mic because I know that was one of your questions as well. Chet, go ahead.
Yeah. So SBF, thank you for at least coming here today. Were a customer assets ever backed one-to-one at FTX?
So FTX, it's a margin trading platform. It's a derivatives platform. So like everyone was depositing collateral, you know, putting on positions, long positions, short positions, you know, futures positions, borrows. You know, the collateral that FTX held was equal to the sum of those customer positions. But there were both positive and negative numbers there. And so,
well, what does that mean? What does that mean?
So, well, what it means is that if you as a customer, you know, if you deposit $1,000 and then, you know, withdraw 1/1000th of a Bitcoin from the exchange, or, you know, use that to sell Bitcoin or something like that, you've put on a margin position there, or you know, or if you do it with a Bitcoin futures position, and you know, you know, many of the customers had negative balances in assets. That's sort of how the platform functioned. And
but okay. But my question is, if I deposited Bitcoin into FTX and intended to trade with it on the exchange, or use it in the derivatives, whatever it would be, would I be able to withdraw that at all times, one-to-one?
So the way that, I mean, the way it worked, again, everyone had deposited collateral and people were borrowing and lending from each other on the platform, those assets, and withdrawing them. But it should have been the case that, you know, we could have liquidated any of those positions, that we could have margin called them and sold them off to regenerate whatever.
But was it ever the case? Was it ever the case that there was a one-to-one backing of assets at FTX to where, let's say 2018, 2019, was there ever a point in time where there was an actual one-to-one backing in the custodial portion of FTX?
So it was always the case.
How was that ensured?
This, if you include the negative positions in that you have positives and you have.
Okay, you broke up. We lost your connection after you said it was always the case.
Sorry. So it.
You're breaking up again, Sam.
Sam, are you there?
Damn it. Let me ping him.
He's rugging the space just like he rugged his customers.
Can you see the can you see him?
Hello?
Chat on stage.
Yes,
Perfect.
SBS,
You're back.
okay, we can hear you again.
Sorry.
Is your connection fixed now?
Yeah, it's not a connection thing. It's when my phone gets a notification that it cuts out for a second.
Okay,
Okay.
can
Do
you
you wanna
please put your phone in not disturb?
Oh,
if you
yeah,
can,
that's a
put it
good
to not
idea.
disturb or turn off notification. That'll be good.
All right, give me a second.
And just a reminder for panelists, if you don't mind,
Yep.
we'll open up the mic for the panelists
right.
after the questions, please.
Cool.
Go ahead,
Sorry,
Sean.
that's a good idea.
Okay.
Right, so do not disturb me.
So you were telling us that it was always the case.
Well, that it was always the case that the customer balances were equal to the assets as long as you count the negatives as well as the positives. That if you add up all of the customer balances, positive and negative, that those were equal to the assets that FTX had. The problem is that there are both positives and negatives there, which is the nature of margin trading. But it should have been the case that at the end of the day, we could have margin called any of those accounts and been able to liquidate them in time.
You did have auto liquidation procedures in place for many accounts at FTX, correct? That was actually part of the system.
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay, I'll get to that a little bit later because there's a little bit deeper dive on that. When did it stop being the case that customer assets were actually backed one-to-one?
Well, it never stopped being the case.
Well, it has to have stopped being the case, SBF. If people can't withdraw their money, then it's not one-to-one.
It never stopped being the case in the context of the fact that there were both positive and negative balances on the exchange, and that if you added all of those up, it added up to the same set of assets. But because there are negative balances, because there are people with borrowers, there are people who are short, that meant that the total amount of assets was not the same as the gross sum of all of the long positions put together, which meant that in order to be able to allow everyone to withdraw all assets from the venue, you would have to settle all contracts and close down all open positions and all open margin positions that anyone had. That's the nature of a margin trading exchange. But to that second point, there's obviously a really big failure there of risk management, and that's on me.
And you said that FTX is what you paid the most attention to.
Yep.
So much so that you claim you couldn't track Alameda's compliance properly. Surely, though, you had the time to be checking, on the balance sheets of the company you were laser focused on, right? Like watching the statistics on trading revenues could not have been taking up so much of your day that you didn't have the ability to oversee compliance and user funds.
So I'm not sure what you mean by compliance in context there, but
compliance to legal laws, fiduciary responsibilities, risk management.
Sure. So I think that first of all, I absolutely could have and deeply wish that I had paid a lot more attention to risk management. Like that was a deep failing, and it was a really embarrassing mistake for me to have made. And I think it was a result in part of me getting a bit less grounded and of me starting to get distracted from all of the details of the company. There are still some I was paying a lot of attention to, but not as many as could have been. And I was paying too much attention to higher level things, to long-term strategic goals, rather than spending as much energy as I absolutely should have on.
And you've stated that the markets plunging were a large part of why FTX had to shutter its door. That's essentially one of the reasons. You gave two reasons, right? And one of the big reasons is you said the markets plunged. But if the funds are backed one-to-one, changes in the market prices versus the dollar have zero impact on being able to withdraw funds if it's set up properly. It just needs the dollar. It just means the dollar value of those funds has changed, correct? So technically, that's not a real reason for why people weren't able to take it out. That's a failure.
I think that's not actually how a derivatives exchange works. On a derivatives exchange, and you can look at the clawbacks that a lot of exchanges had back in 2018, the really frequent clawbacks. And the core problem that was going on there was, in order for everyone to be able to realize what they think they have, you need to be able to close down all positions on the venue such that no accounts end up net negative. So you need to be able to take every single account, in theory, liquidate them, close down all margin, all futures positions, such that there are no negative numbers or positions or balances anywhere, and do that. And if you have a long position, if some user has a long position on the exchange and markets start crashing, at some point that position is going to be underwater. And at the point where that position is underwater, that means you aren't going to be able to close it down while still leaving that account with a positive balance. It'll have a
But it
negative
shouldn't be
balance.
able. It shouldn't be able in a properly managed environment for it to go underwater, right? Essentially, because if we're to look at your terms of service, which says that you can't loan out user funds, it shouldn't be possible for those user funds to end up basically being loaned out to those margins.
So that was one piece of the terms of service, but there are many pieces to the terms of service concerning other parts of the exchange.
Yes, but that doesn't change that parts of the terms of service. One, the fact that there are other parts of the terms of service doesn't change the paragraph of the terms of service that says you can't lend out the depositor's funds to FTX trading, and FTX trading could not move them to be traded. And now, granted, when you spoke with Vox or the reporter at Vox over there, you seemed to indicate that, in fact, funds were lended out from FTX to Alameda, and Alameda then made the trades, and therefore that's why you're able to kind of make the statement that FTX wasn't doing investments here.
So the parts of the terms of service are overridden by other parts of the terms of service. Well, it was the case that I don't know if that was part of the. I don't know exactly.
So was it your intention to use user funds, customer funds, to lend out to others on the platform without their consent?
So if you imagine any futures position that a customer had on the platform, that is a situation where, in order for one side that has a position on to be able to be made whole, it has to be the case that the other side is able to close down their position, that those mark-to-market gains that they have are conditional, and that they're credited with on the platform are conditional on us being able to liquidate the other side of that futures contract without that account going under. The same is true of all spot margin positions on the platform, and that was spelled out in the terms of service if you read the full terms of service. And so there's that piece of it. There's a lot of other things going on as well, and so I don't want to say that was the only thing that went wrong. It wasn't.
Okay, we'll go deeper into that a little bit later. You were the majority stakeholder by a wide margin.
I've just got two quick questions.
Go for it, Mario.
Chat. Also, I've just got another panelist, chat, who could be jumping in. I've given him the right to jump in to comment on a few points. So if he jumps in, his account is real zero sum. Sam, my question is, was Alameda allowed to remove assets from FTX? And is that how they paid back Genesis and others who demanded to close their loans?
So, all users were to some extent allowed to remove assets from FTX in that, they could deposit funds to FTX, they could withdraw, and they could even withdraw more than they had of some assets as long as it was over collateralized by other assets. So that piece was, in theory, not specific to one firm, and was rather a feature of how the platform worked. That's how margin trading works. It's how collateralized but not fully funded positions work on platforms. That being said, obviously, something really bad happened, and that something was that position got way too big, and I vastly underestimated.
Okay, we'll get into that piece of that in just we'll get into that piece in just a second after a few more questions. Are you still the owner of Alameda right now?
I mean, there's a definitional issue given what you think of the Chapter 11 process. I was a large owner of it prior to that.
And how much of a stake did you own it?
Chet, before we go down that road, can I just get some clarity on the loan book thing? Because I've got a message here from an owner of an exchange, and he says the following. He says, the way margin trading works is via the loan book. that where people explicitly put their funds to be available for others to borrow for the specific rate. For people that didn't put their funds in the loan book, all those assets should have always been backed 1-to-1 and never touched. So it's a case of saying that in order for my money to be lent out, you would have had to have my specific permission. I would have had to put it out there to be available for people to borrow against when they take a position, right?
So I totally hear you on that. There were billions of dollars in the borrow lending book. On top of that, there are billions of dollars of open interest on futures contracts, which is another place where, in order for that to be able to settle successfully, it needs to be the case that that you have, you basically need to have, everyone be able to be liquidated there in time. And so that's another source where this came from. There were some amount of lines of credit given to some firms on the venue. And then there were some other effects on top of that, that when stacked together, created a position that was larger than it should have been, larger than I thought it was, larger than I should have allowed it to become, and represented a real failure of oversight and management.
Sam, are you saying that there were people that had their collateral not on the platform and they were trading against collateral that was not actually even in the system? Because if the collateral was on the system, then to liquidate the collateral should have been automatic. But if the collateral was out of the system, so if you're saying Alameda, for example, or others had collateral, but the collateral was not in FTX, then isn't that a breach of the terms of service?
Oh, they did have collateral on FTX, unfortunately. And I say unfortunately, but this was a huge mistake of mine as well, because I should have anticipated, the prospect of this and should not have.
What happened to that collateral?
Things, but well, it decreased quite a bit in value, and so you look at it decreased by, I think, many billions of dollars in value over a 2-day period, starting on November 6th.